Hi guys, so this is part one of the video lecture on sentence structure and commas. And these are the areas that most people in fact, struggle the most with: how and when to use certain punctuation, particularly how and when to use a comma. I know for me, when I kept looking at the million rules, it felt like I think there were 14, but it was so overwhelming. But when you start looking at them, they follow the same trends, and there are about two or three big categories of rules. And once you understand those and understand what a comma is doing, it's a lot easier to understand how to use them. To understand how to use them, you need to know a little bit more about what a clause is and how sentence structure works. So I know this isn't the most fun topic in the world, but it is necessary to understanding why this works the way it does. Now, I have a lot of students who have looked at me and gone, well, why is it important? You know what I mean. So I want to illustrate the difference that punctuation can make, how much it can change how we understand what's written. So these two versions of this letter are exactly the same. The only thing that changes is the punctuation. So the first one, Dear John, I want a man who knows what love is all about. You are generous, kind, thoughtful. People who are not like you admit to being useless and inferior. You have ruined me for other men. I yearn for you. I have no feelings whatsoever when we are apart. I can be forever happy. Will you let me be yours? Jane. So that's a pretty nice love letter, right? That's a letter I think a lot of us would want to get. Now let's look at the other letter with, again, the only thing that changes is the punctuation. Dear John, I want a man who knows what love is. All about you are generous, kind, thoughtful people who are not like you. Admit to being useless and inferior. You have ruined me. For other men I yearn. For you I have no feelings whatsoever. When we are apart, I can be forever happy. Will you let me be? Yours, Jane. So, two very, very different letters ultimately. And you can probably tell is what the punctuation does is group ideas together. It tells you what words go together and what words don't. So in the first letter, I want a man who knows what love is all about. All of those words go together. I want a man who knows what love is. Now, those are the words that go together, and all about is part of the next thought. Sentences are kind of a thought in and of itself. Commas separate parts of that main thought into, kind of group those together so that you understand how to read the sentence. So here, for you, I have no feelings whatsoever. Well, these are all part of the same thought. I have no feelings whatsoever for you. But we want to go ahead and show that this is extra information next to this independent clause, I have no feelings whatsoever, that tells us more about that independent clause. So that's... Sorry, I had to sneeze. So that's one of the main things that commas do. The other, and we'll talk more about it, is to separate two related independent clauses within the same thought. So let's kind of talk a little bit more about them, and then we'll get some other examples of kind of funny comma mistakes, and then we'll go into more information. Okay. So here's a couple more examples of why this is important. These are funny. Most of them have to do with what's called the Oxford comma, which is the final comma in a list of three things. But they show that the impact that a improperly placed, missing, or extra comma can make in a sentence. So this first one, I like cooking my family and my pets. Well, what we think the writer means is I like cooking, comma, my family, comma, and my pets. It's a list of three things that the speaker likes. What's actually being said is that the writer likes putting their family and their pets in a pot and cooking them, which is really disturbing. So another one, I love her, period. Well, what the writer we think means is I love her, comma, period. What he's actually saying is I love her menstruation cycle. Kind of gross. Let's eat grandma. Well, the way it's written in the first one, it's let's eat grandma for dinner. In the second one, it's let's eat, comma, grandma. Grandma, let's come and eat together at the table. Grandma's no longer dinner. The fourth one is kind of the similar thing as the first one, but we have one more comma. Oh, we're missing one comma in that one. So learn how to cut, marinate, and cook friends. Well, what that one means as written is that you're learning how to chop up your friends, put them in a marinade, and cook them. You need to have another comma after cook so that it's addressing it to your friends. So friends, let's together learn how to cut, marinate, and cook. A couple more. We can go through these very quickly because we don't need to spend that much time on them. Here's a case where a comma would have been really nice. I'm not going to go into detail on that one. This one, what they're saying, because there's no commas placed, toilet only for disabled, elderly, pregnant children. So the only people who are allowed to use this toilet are those who are simultaneously elderly, children who are disabled, and pregnant. Well, that's not possible, so no one gets to use that toilet. This is probably one of my favorites. Stop clubbing, comma, baby seals. What that means, because you've separated this thought, stop clubbing, from who it's being addressed to, baby seals, is that the baby seals need to stop going to raves. What it means is stop clubbing baby seals, take the comma out, and you have an imperative sentence with the direct object of baby seals. And it makes all the difference in the world. So in all of these cases, you can see the placement of the comma, or the lack of a placement of a comma, completely changed the meaning. And that's why it's really crucial that we spend some time making sure that you're using them correctly, because you want to make sure that your ideas are grouped in the way that you intend, and that your reader understands what you mean and doesn't misunderstand it in some at all, or in some very strange way, like in these cases. So we're gonna go through some sentence structure basics. I went through these a little bit in the sentence structure basics PowerPoint and video lecture last week. So we're just gonna kind of recap them pretty quickly because they are absolutely crucial to understanding how commas work. So all sentences have three things, if you remember. They have a subject, the person or thing in doing an action or in a state of being, and the focus of the sentence. A predicate verb, which is the action or state of being done that's completed by the subject or the thing that the subject is doing or being. And a sentence has to form a complete thought, meaning the sentence can be understood on its own without any of the surrounding content. So you don't need additional information from other sentences to understand what's happening in that sentence. So the most basic form of a sentence is a simple sentence, and it is one independent clause. That's all it is. It contains one subject and one verb. It can have objects and modifiers, and so in this case we have some color coding, which is why I've used it. So you have yellow is the subject and green is the verb. She wrote. That is a sentence. It has a subject, it has a verb, and it forms a complete thought. Same thing here. She completed. We need to know what she completed for it to be a complete thought. So we have a direct object, her literature review. Here we have he organized. We need to know what was organized. So we have his sources, and then we have a prepositional phrase by theme. They studied APA rules for many hours, the same thing as that. But you can see in all of these, they have one complete thought. They have one subject. They have one verb. They're just an independent clause. They would pass the I know that test. So I know that she wrote. I know that she completed her literature review. I know that he organized his sources by theme. I know that they studied APA rules for many hours. All of those pass. They're all simple sentences, which are also independent clauses with a period on the end. So portions of sentence that have a subject and a predicate verb, but may or may not have a complete thought, are called clauses. And if you remember, independent clauses form a complete thought, can be a sentence on their own and pass the I know that test. Dependent clauses may have a subject and a verb, but they do not form a complete sentence, complete thought, do not pass the I know that test, can't be a sentence on its own. They must be connected to an independent clause, and they add more information about the independent clause. So an independent clause can stand alone as a sentence. The secret of life is honesty. So the secret of life is your subject, is your predicate, honesty is predicate adjective, I believe is what it's called. We're not going to worry about that. But it's one thought, it's one sentence, one subject, one verb. If you can fake that, you've got it made. So you have you is a subject, can is a verb, well, can fake is a verb, and that is a direct object. So you have a complete thought here, but it can't be a sentence on its own. It wouldn't make sense on its own. If you can fake that, what? Here we've got another subject and a verb. You have got is the verb here. It made. What makes this dependent instead of independent is the addition of this word if. That makes it subordinate to this independent clause. And when you have that, and we'll talk more about it in a minute, you actually need a comma to separate the dependent clause from the independent clause. But you can see from this, you've got the difference between an independent and a dependent clause. And that is crucial. Understanding when you have an independent clause and when you have a dependent clause is 99% of figuring out how to place a comma. So we're going to stop here for this lecture, and I'm going to go ahead and pick up with what's really the new material, which is how commas work, in the next video. So bear with me, and I'll be back with part 2.